Hello, in this video we're going to take a look at the updates that have been added to the R.U.B.E Box2D editor in version 1.4, and I tend to ramble on and on about these things and take a long time to explain them, and it becomes a very long video. So what I thought I'd do this time is after I've done the video, I'll put in here, I'll make some annotations with links so that you can just jump directly to one of these topics that might interest you instead of sitting through the whole video. So let's get on with the first thing on the list, fonts. This is pretty self-explanatory. In the options dialog we have a tab for fonts, and you can set fonts for the script editor, feedback and message log panel. So that's this one, that one and this one. If we just open a scene here, this was actually a request. Somebody wanted to have the fonts larger like this so that they were easier to read in the script when they were editing them. Okay, selection to cursor. This was actually added in 1.3.1, so it's been around for a little bit, but what this does is, this is the cursor obviously, and the selection here, let me just select these two things. The white cross is the selection center, and selection to cursor is done by hitting SC, so that's selection to cursor, like that, and it moves the whole selection so that the center of them is on top of the cursor. So it's like the inverse of cursor to selection, which is CS, like that, which moves the cursor there. So that's it's just the opposite version of that, really. Okay, image aspect scale. We've only been able to scale images without scaling the aspect until now, but we have a new property here called aspect scale. And oh, by the way, I changed the property that was usually called scale before to call that height in world units, because that was quite confusing, I think, for a lot of people, and it probably wasn't such a good idea to call it scale, because a scale implies that it's like a percentage of something. So to try and make this clearer, this is the height in the world units of the image, so that's the vertical height here is 8.6 for this one. Anyway, so aspect scale, this affects the width of the image. Well, it's the width and the height, the ratio between them. So let's look at this image here. The default is 1, obviously, and that just means to use the natural aspect ratio of the image, like this one here. And we can set this to something else, like say if we set it to 2, it makes the width, twice as wide as it would normally be, or we can make it say 0.5 to make it half as wide as it normally would be. And we can also set that by using the mouse, and that's done by scaling kind of the same way that you scale fixtures and bodies and everything. You would start by hitting S, and then you would do X to restrict it to scaling width-wise, or Y to restrict it to scaling height-wise. So you can scale these separately like that. Okay, next up we have a few more options for how the path of images gets saved to the raw info file when you export, and that is done in the scene settings dialog in the export options. And in here we have, as before, we have save full path for images, and if you turn that off, you'll have these other two options down here. And previously images were always saved relative to the exported JSON file, but you can check this check box here to make them saved relative to the original file, that is the .rube file. And you can also add a little bit more extra path there if you want to make them relative to a little bit more an extra piece of path, so to speak, from either one of these exported files or the original RUBE file, whichever you have checked here. And you can also, if it suits, you can put an absolute path in here and make all your images saved relative to the absolute path. Okay, while we are in the scene settings, over in the custom properties tab, we have no custom properties. Hold on a second. Let's find a project that has some custom properties. Okay, so let's say we want these custom properties to be copied over to another scene without having to go through all the process of setting them all up one by one. There's a button down here on the right that you can use to copy the script definitions of these properties to the clipboard. So if I click this and then go back over to my first scene that didn't have any custom properties in it, now we can look at the script panel and we can paste the script in here and run that. So now in my scene settings I should find that this scene now has those same custom properties duplicated. So this is not quite ideal. It could use a little bit more work. Maybe if there was a bit more of a dedicated feature to maybe just another button here to import from another scene or something like that would be a little bit more convenient, I think. But this should alleviate most of the work from copying properties from existing scenes. Okay, on to the command line interface, and let's look at I have a folder here with a few files in it, and I'm going to use these as an example for what the command line interface does. And we can if you run RUBE with no command line parameters, it will start up the graphical user interface as normal. And what's new in the 1.4 update is that if you give RUBE some parameters, in particular this one is quite handy to start with, the -h, this one just shows you the usage for the command line interface. And you can, I guess you can read all this later on and figure out the details, but just as an example here, what we can do is open, we have an input file, and that's going to be a RUBE or a raw export file as well as possible, and then you can run a script on it or multiple scripts, and then you can resave it as a RUBE or export it as a raw info, and you can also dump the C++ source if you want to do that as well. So just as a quick example of that, if I go back over here, I have a file called car RUBE, and this has a car in there, and the car has 2 wheels, which is obvious, but we're going to duplicate them in a minute, so making a point that there's only 2 there at the moment. And we have this little script here, it's just this very small one, and just to look at that, see what we have in here, we're going to get the body called car body and delete it, and then we are going to, well, starting from in here, we're going to select all bodies sorry, not select them, we're just going to get a reference to all bodies, and then we're going to duplicate them, and then we're going to translate them 5 units to the right and 5 units up. So this is just a little script to show you what the command line can do. So we would run this by something like this. So I have car.rube as the input. Script that I want to run is test.rs, and you can actually put more scripts in here, so I could run it twice if I wanted to, like that. And then I'm going to export it to a file called no car, because there's no car after I delete it, right? So if I run that, we should see a file showing up in here called no car, and this file is a little bit smaller because it has no car. And if I open this file, we should see the body that was called car body is gone, and everything that remained was duplicated and moved 5 units up and to the right. So this is going to be very handy for when you have a large number of files to work with that all need to have the same thing done to them, or if you quite often you might find that you want to keep all your RUBE files, but when you come to actually deploy your game or make your resources for your game, you just want to get the most recent version of your RUBE file and export it automatically. So I think a lot of people would be using this without any scripts in the middle. It would just be like something like this. They just want to convert their RUBEs into raw export files automatically in a big batch. It's probably the most common usage, I think, will be that. Right, so on to the last part of the video here. There have been quite a number of updates for scripting. Let's start with the, get rid of those. I'll just go into the RUBE script reference, and the color class is a new addition. This is just to make things a bit easier when you're working with color tints, like as in images. You can now pass around colors as classes in their own right, and you can set them by using a value between 0 and 255 or 0 and 1, or you can actually use a hex string like HTML as well, like this. Okay, and we also now have the ability for scripts to read and write files. They just write strings, read and write strings. So you can check if a directory exists or a file exists, and you can read a string from a file, and you can write a string to a file. So this should open up quite a few possibilities, and I'll show you one a little bit later that's quite handy. Okay, scripts can now include other files in the same way that the C preprocessor does inclusion. So just as an example of that, what can we do here? I'll go back to this test.rs that we had, and this is not going to be such a great example, but I'll just copy and paste this file here, and I'll call it test2, and we'll edit this, and instead of having anything in here, we'll just include test. So this is going to include the file that actually does something. and then let's get rid of all this stuff, and I'll go back to my command line, and this time I will run test2, and I'll call this nocar2. So we're running a different script, but it's including the first one. And then we go back over here, we should see nocar2, and the same thing has happened there. So that was a pretty bad example, really, wasn't it? But I don't I don't think I need to explain to all you programmers out there that are watching this what include does. And it functions in the same way as C preprocessor, so it's almost as if you had copied and pasted the contents of the included file directly in there yourself. Alright, okay, so another big feature that's been added in this update is the idea of, I'm calling it a script library, but it's just sort of a means of managing multiple scripts. So if you click this button here at the bottom of the script panel, you'll toggle on and off a set of buttons at the top of the script panel here, and these function pretty much in the same way as the main new open and save buttons there. And we can view multiple scripts and switch between them by using this combo box like this. So there's a slight difference between the very top entry in this list, which is always called scratchpad, and the scratchpad is the one that belongs to the currently active document. So if I come back over here, I have this from when I added the custom properties to this scene, and we can see that the name is changing in the combo box there too to reflect which scene this script is for. So this is kind of unique in this combo box in that it's going to change whenever we change scenes like this. Now the rest of the entries here are kind of, they're more or less what I'm calling the library, because they don't change per scene. So if I click this one here, check hook event, now when I change between the scenes, I'm not changing the contents of the script panel here. So I can make a new script like this, and I can say print apple in this one, and I can just run it. So it'll run like that. And I can make another one, and banana, like that. So this is quite handy for just switching between a few scripts that you might want to run and have present, without the need for having to, previously when there was only one script here, you had to sort of comment something out and run something else, or copy and paste things around, and it was just a nuisance. So now you can keep multiple things all in one place and use them all at the same time, almost. So the reason these other scripts here have names is because you can add names to your scripts like this. So you can put a special comment here if it has name : we would have this, and then when you save this file, I'm just going to put it in here. So I'm going to put it in here with these other ones, and I'll call this apple, like that, save. Now when I save the file, you'll see that the combo box is updated here to give us a clearer idea of what the script is, and give other people a clearer idea of what it is, and just make things easier to check when we're selecting things from the combo box like that. So where's banana? So we call this banana. Nice banana. And then when I save it, has a name as well. Okay, so where are these scripts found and how do we bring them into this combo box is the next question. You can obviously make a new one like I just did, or you can open them from a file, or you can actually drag and drop them into this panel as well. But if you have a set of scripts that you want to see in here at one time, maybe you're working on a game that uses a bunch of scripts, and then you shift to another game which uses other scripts that you don't want to see the old ones anymore. Those kind of things are organized in this dialog that opens up from this button, and this is called the script hook setup, which I'll get to in a minute. But just for now, looking at the right hand side of this dialog, we can see the same list of scripts that we saw in the combo box there, and we can filter them by using the filter at the top. And here we see down at the bottom a folder that we've looked in to find these scripts, and this folder is recursively checked for all files that end with the .rs extension, and it will bring them all in here, and it will check the name tag that we had in there and give them nice names if they have nice names to use. So we can actually do things like, if I step one folder back and refresh this, we can bring in all the other scripts that are already existing from the action menu, so all the typical stuff like add body, add fixture, and so on. And then when we go back here, we'll see these in our combo box as well. And this tends to make things pretty big. There's a huge list there. And another thing that you can do, if I just go into, where are we? Body, circle. Okay, this will do. So this also makes it easy to quickly edit the things in the action menu too, by the way, because these are, now I'm looking at this here, I can quickly change things. To keep the size of this list down a bit, you can use the concept of tags, and that's another specially named comment. So any comment that starts with tags : and then followed by a comma separated list of terms will be used as tags, and you probably can't see that. Hold on. Okay, so all of the tags that have been found in all of these scripts that are loaded in at the moment will show up in this little list down here, and we can, for example, say circle. I can set the circle tag there, and then when I toggle this switch off and on, we'll see only the scripts that relate to circles. There's not many of them, is there? Okay, let's try body. Okay, so all of these scripts that relate to body are shown in the combo box, but no other ones. So that should make it easy to organize a set of scripts that are for a particular purpose. Okay, what else do we have? Tags. Alright, so the last part of this video we're going to look at script hooks, and they are hopefully going to be very, very useful, and they are in the left hand side of this dialog. And the idea here is that when certain events occur in the program, you'll be able to trigger scripts at that time. So for this first release, we just have the keys, number keys 0 to 9, and also one event for when images are dropped into the scene. So as an example of that, let's let me just change this add body circle script a little bit. What I'll do is I'll copy that, and then I will make a new script, paste it in here, because I just want to demonstrate another new function that's been added. As well as finding the position of the cursor, we can also now get the position of the mouse. So actually I need to save this too, so I might as well name this. What are we doing? Alright, my name, add circle body at mouse pos, and then we'll save this. I'll just call it that for now. And then in the script hook setup, we should have this one here. Okay, so that's the script that I just made, and I'm going to attach that to key press 0. So I select both of these items in each side, and I click the add button in the middle, and this will attach that script to that key press. And we can actually add a bunch of scripts there if you find that convenient. I'm just going to use this one for now. So that means that as I move the mouse around in the screen, in the scene, and I push the 0 key, I can add circles to the scene wherever I have the mouse at that time. Neat, huh? What else have we got? Well, that's the basic idea, and there's a few more little bits of information that we can get from those events, and I have this script here, check hook event, and I'll just remove that one. And so now I have key press 0 is going to be this check hook event thing, and if we just see what this does, turn those tags on again. Check hook event. Okay, so all this does is it just prints out some information about the current event that's running, and every event will have this function here, get hook event key, get hook event name. And in the case of key presses, we can also check whether the control key is down or the alt key is down. And so I'll just press 0 in the scene here, and we can see in the script, the message log view here, we were doing key press 0, that was the event's name, and the control key and the alt key were not down. If I hold both of those down and do 0 again, we'll see that now they are true. So that gives you some combinations of key presses to use for various things. And as an example of that, in combination with the file reading and writing that was also added, let me put on here, key press 1, I'm going to add a script that I made called quick select, this one. So I'm going to put that onto key press 1, and I'm going to put it on key press 2 as well. So notice I've put the same script on both of those key presses, but because I have this function here, get hook event name, which gives me the key that's actually being pressed, I can do different things with this quick select script. And if we take a quick look at the contents of that quick select script, it's a little bit involved, and what it does is, if the control key is down, it looks at all the bodies that are currently selected and it writes a list of them to a file. If the control key is not down, it uses the contents of that same file to select bodies by the ID that were written to that file. So where's a file that has some bodies? Okay, so that lets me do neat things like this. So I can select these two bodies over here, and I do control 1. That will set those two bodies as like a selection set, and then let's say I come over here and I do Control 2. That will give me another selection set. So now hitting 1 and 2, I can switch between these selection sets, and I can easily reassign the selection set to something else. So now I have 1 and 2 on those sets of bodies. This only works for bodies at the moment, but I mean, I will probably have to write out a version that does checks which edit method you're using at the moment, because there's also a new function that lets you check whether you're currently using body edit mode or fixture edit mode and so on. So it would be quite possible to also just make this naturally work for fixtures and joints and everything else as well. I was going to say something and I forgot. Oh, never mind. Another handy thing that I will also just show, I made a couple of scripts here called move a bit and rotate a bit, and I put those on 3 and 4, and these are also using the control key, or checking whether the control key is down or not. So in the case of move a bit, this just moves up or down. Oops. That back. Moves up or down depending on whether the control key is pressed when I'm pressing 3. So I found this quite handy for things that when you get a bunch of things that are overlapping and you're trying to select something but there's other things on top of it. It's quite useful just to do something like that to move the thing away, and you can combine that with the selection groups to getting the wrong button. Selection groups to quickly, select things and move them and so on. And the rotate is the same, basically, just rotating around the cursor there. So you could use that to quickly rotate things 90 degrees or something like that, I guess. Okay, so the last thing I want to look at in this video is the images dropped event at the bottom, and this hopefully should help quite a few people. And this is triggered when images are added to the scene by drag and drop, and you can run any of these scripts here, but most useful is the script that does this here, adjusting the size. This is just a UTF-8 test here. So what I'm going to do is add that script to the images dropped event. Actually, I'll just run it without that first and see why we might want to have this feature. I have a bunch of images over here, and I'm going to I have 6 images, and I'm dropping 6 images into the scene, and they're all sized with the vertical height of 1 world unit, and they're all dumped exactly on top of each other, so they're very hard to select, and people don't like this. I realize that. I am aware, don't worry. So what this script does, this is just using the include feature to include a function from another file there, but it adjusts the image sizes relative using the pixel dimensions. So let me go back here and just set up that mapping again. So I want this event and that script and add. So that's attached there now. Now if I drop those same images on here again, we'll see that now, still a little bit tricky to see, but now they have at least been sized relative to their pixel sizes. So you can sort of see them in there. They've been sized how most people, I think, expected them to be. Though bear in mind, you have to select you have to decide on a conversion between pixels and world units for this. There's no way it should just happen automatically without you deciding. So you're going to have to look in that script there, and it's this one here. Okay, so I've chosen 64 pixels to meters there. So that's how that's working. And I found that this is still not quite as convenient as I would like. So I made another function that does something like this. And this time, oops. So now we should be able to adjust the sizes and the positions, and I thought it would be handy, for me at least, if when I drop the images I forgot to save that, sorry. I have to save this before it works. I thought it would be handy for me, at least, when I drop the images, that they should all be laid out beside each other so I can see exactly what I've just put into the scene, and they're very easy to select now because nothing is overlapping with anything else. So I hope that that little feature there will make life easier for people, and I think we've come to the end of the video. So as usual, if you have any comments or questions or whatever, jump onto the forums and let me know. Thanks for watching.